Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Most of us as we age decide that we want to be a little bit different than we were when we were younger. I mean, after all, think about this. You spend a lot of your time and most of your beginning of your life basically pleasing and trying to do things for others. Your parents tell you how you should do the right thing about planning and saving for retirement, that perfect career, the kind of education you should have. You pursue these things and you find, well, they just didn't get you that kind of life that you thought it would. That doing things the way you were told to just didn't seem to also work out the same way. Well, what if you could change all that to what you really believe inside of yourself? In other words, do your subconscious programs truly reflect who you are now as an adult? Well, joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is founder of Intuitive Hypnosis Portland, which is the website.com as well. And we're going to be talking about how we might be able to change these things through the use of hypnosis. I'd like to welcome the Beyond 50 radio program today, our guest, Debbie Taylor-Lilly. Debbie, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, you have an interesting background because you actually worked in organizational management with children and families in both public and private education as a teacher and a principal as well, and then you moved into this direction with your life. So you must have been able to see a way that you could apply what you learned through that background for a way that could actually perhaps empower people for personal change. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. You know, I remember early in my teaching career just noticing how strong the belief systems could be with children, that if they came to school and they had reading difficulties, they would often say, well, you know, I have trouble reading or I can't do math. I'm just like my dad or just like my mom. And I realized that the majority of children who had that belief, you know, that's why they were having trouble in school, is because they had been told or programmed all along that I'm just like this person or that person, when in fact they could oftentimes be excellent readers and very good students. So I really, you know, I tapped into the idea of how strong our belief systems are at what an early age all of those beliefs were developed, and then also just dealing with staff members and parents especially, and just becoming really aware of how unhappy so many people were because they are still running from beliefs and behaviors that were downloaded, you know, into their psyche at an early age. So it just became very clear to me that this was an area that I was interested in exploring.
I think this is so interesting because when you take a look at the gene theory, for instance, you know, people are actually still repeating that same thought that, well, it's in my genes. In other words, I have a propensity, for instance, for diabetes because it runs in the family. But the fact is, through epigenetics and a lot of research that's been done over the last 40 years, we realize that's not true. You know, that it's actually more environmental, for instance, and behavioral that we actually take on those particular things. And it isn't so much in the genes, in other words, wired into the DNA. And it sounds very much like this, that we seem to carry belief systems based on that download, as you were talking about, but it doesn't have to be true and it's changeable.
Absolutely. And I just think that is such great news, and it's so encouraging when I like to educate my clients and my students as well about that possibility that, you know, you are not a victim to that genetic code, that it is about environment, and we determine that internal environment based on our values and beliefs. And many times we find that our conscious values and beliefs are in conflict with those pre-programmed values and beliefs from years and years ago. And so hypnosis is just a marvelous way to access that subconscious mind, address those programs, and update those things so that they are an accurate reflection of who you are right here, right now, as an adult.
Now, what is it about the subconscious? You know, we know now that the subconscious pretty much runs the show. That you may go ahead and decide consciously, this is the direction I want to go. I mean, look at the self-help industry, for instance, in America. What does it approach, like $1 billion a year now, both in seminars, retreats, books, you name it, it's all out there.
Incredible.
But people don't really seem to make the lasting changes that they want to make that move them into a direction that helps them to feel successful, to be who they believe they want to be, okay? So that's the subconscious that's running the show. You tried consciously to change that, But why don't they do? Why doesn't the subconscious update itself automatically?
Well, that's a really good question. You know, what's interesting is that most people think they are consciously aware of what they do for most of the day. And so that is, really confusing to them as to why things don't automatically update. But the truth is that neurologists tell us we're only consciously aware of what we're doing during the day about 1 to 5% of our day. So even if you are highly aware during that 5%, that's still only 5%. So the subconscious mind, that's below the level of conscious awareness, it is running the show. It's on autopilot. And until a person is really motivated to go in and make those changes, those programs just repeat themselves. The subconscious mind is processing at, such a high intensity. It really is running the show. And until we learn to access that subconscious realm, it's just going to continue to run on autopilot.
That would be nice if we could be aware a lot of the times how conditional we tend to be.
Yes.
Now, I say that because of this. I had a guest some time ago on the program, and he was pretty fascinating. There was a book that he wrote, Mind Programming, I think it was called. And this was somebody who had even worked for the FBI for many years as a forensic lie detector specialist. I mean, this was somebody who really dedicated himself to understanding how the mind works. But in this particular book, he was taking on the suggestion or the attitude about true subliminal programming that happens out there on a regular basis. And as you really grasp what he's talking about, begin looking around you, you realize, there's a lot of truth in this because, for instance, advertising is created to create an anxiety in someone to motivate them to make a buying decision for whatever it is that they're actually trying to sell to you.
Absolutely.
Now, a good example of that is, people may be out there, that's nonsense, flashing the popcorn up on the movie screen. That didn't get me to buy popcorn, but that's not what I'm talking about. For instance, look at how many, in any given city, how many fast food restaurants are on a street, okay, in a given mile. And you'll find quite a few of them. Now, we don't pull into these places because we're actually hungry. We pull in because of perhaps the subtle anxiety we feel from whatever reason. It could be driving in traffic or whatever the case is. So we pull into that because getting a burger from a place like this tends to make us feel relieved of that anxiety. Okay? Now think about the buying decisions we also make as well. Do we buy that new car, that sports car, because we really wanted something like that, or did we want that sports car because, the neighbors all around me have it, so I should live up to that standard? Do you understand? Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now when you take a look at trying to change that programming so that you could more lucidly make decisions because they're really your decisions, that's a pretty powerful thing to try to attempt.
It's really powerful, and it's kind of funny because, when we talk about driving past those fast food restaurants or looking at that new car, we really are in such a state of trance that we're in hypnosis. And one thing I tell my clients oftentimes is that I'm not actually going to hypnotize you. I'm going to un-hypnotize you.
I'm
going to give you access to that subconscious mind, that part of your mind that houses all of those habits, those rituals and routines, and that really most of us are in that trance state. Remember, that subconscious mind's running the show 95 to 99% of our day. And those advertisers know that, and they tap into our motivation, they tap into our emotion, they know how to use all of that rich language about getting us to visualize ourselves in that new car, and all of these products solve our problems. So they really hit that emotional and that motivational state, and they've got us. They're programming us. Mm-hmm. When we're in that state, we basically are just observing and absorbing everything in our environment, and that is what's getting programmed into that subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm. I even had a suggestion as my wife and I were talking last night about as we go to try to recall something. You're talking about maybe somebody and you can't seem to recall the name right away, and all of a sudden now there's a belief system being created out there that as you start to lose your short-term memory as you get older, like it's supposed to happen, that, you might have this. And so here's a pill. Now, here's what's interesting, and I said this, I think what really happens, why old aging adults tend to not maybe have as quick of recall, is we have so much messaging bombarding us when we step out the door of our houses. I mean, if you live in a house like, with us, we don't even turn the TV on when we do, and it isn't until later on in the evening. It's quiet at the house, so you don't hear anything. But when you step out the door, you got billboards, you got messages on sides of cars. Everybody's distracted with their cell phones these days, and I say, the reason you can't recall quickly is I think the mind is adapting to shut down most of the noise.
It is.
I don't know. It's just a thought I had. So.
And for what's relevant and what do I need to pay attention to?
Right.
I think that you tapped into the truth of it as well, that it is a belief system, that as we get older, we start to have problems with our memory. There is some physiological change that happens with aging, but that belief system is all powerful. That's what creates that internal environment that then creates a response of our genetic expression.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said that when people come to you, you un-hypnotize them. Now, tell us what that means exactly.
Okay. Well, when we talk about hypnosis, we're often talking about, the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, as if we had two different minds, and of course we don't. We've just got the one. But what we do have are conscious processes and subconscious processes. So a conscious process would be something, the things that we do when we're, highly aware, very intentional things, kind of one-off things that we do during the day. And subconscious processes are everything else, all of that stuff that we do that's autopilot. So when we're looking at that, it's important to understand that subconscious mind, it's so powerful, but it's also very impersonal. There's really no part of your conscious awareness in there monitoring what's going on. It simply is just doing its job. It's just tapping into a conditioned response. And when I talk about habits and rituals and routines and all of that, what I'm talking about are neural pathways in our brain. And so we look at something and it's a conditioned response. Those neural pathways get activated and then we respond accordingly. So we're really just like these little robots running around in the world, not really consciously making decisions. We're running off of these pre-programmed behaviors, many of which were downloaded and incorporated into our subconscious mind in early childhood. So by bringing somebody into the office here, and I like to educate them about how their mind works, and getting them into just a nice state of relaxation where they have access to that subconscious realm, then they have active conscious control over which of those neural pathways are going to continue to dominate in any given situations, or do they choose to create some new ones. So it's not that we go in and get rid of bad habits, we just create the new habits that serve you, habits that translate as rituals and routines that are accurate reflections of who you are now. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean by un-hypnotizing. I pull you out of that state of subconscious trance and show you how to take control and be consciously aware. Then your habits are modern. They're up to date.
So, it's fair to say for our listeners then that as you're out there during the course of your day, and this is why sometimes it's very difficult to make conscious change, is that that you're in a hypnotized state when you tend to react to external stimulus rather than initiating action. Would that be a fair way of looking at it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for the listeners, and we're not presuming that they're not very smart because we know they are,
yes.
What does that mean exactly?
Well,
the difference between reacting to an outside stimulus and initiating action.
Well, it means that that they're not being mindful. I think that's probably the best way to summarize.
Okay.
That if you can practice mindfulness and being present, then you are consciously aware and you're responding out of intention and consciousness rather. So you're acting, not reacting.
Mm-hmm. Now, I myself, went to a hypnotist a long time ago, and what I really enjoyed about the whole session was how relaxed, almost dead feeling my mind felt. It was like I really just didn't want to. Not that I was asleep, because right. You're very aware of what's going on around you as the hypnotist is working with you, but it was a sense of real deep, almost theta relaxation, so to speak.
That's exactly what it is. It is incredibly relaxing. I can't tell you how many clients come in and they say, I just don't relax. I haven't relaxed for 20 years, so good luck. But basically what I tell them is I'm going to just, I'm going to bore you into a coma with my monotone voice.
Right.
I start with the induction, and of course, I have them in a nice, comfortable position and all of that. And they actually go into that state, and you're right, it is the theta state. It is that state, that brainwave state that we go into right before we go to sleep and right as we're waking up. And usually we're only there for, maybe 8 to 10 seconds before we go to the other side of that. So to get in that state and be consciously aware of it, it's kind of like lucid consciousness, lucid waking. And it does feel really good. It's amazing.
Now, I'm curious because some people claim that hypnosis had never worked for them, and if that's true, then how come it maybe works for some people and not others?
Oh, that's such a great question. There are so many variables involved in regard to the success of one client over another. Sometimes it has, just to do with the time of day. You could try hypnosis in the early part of your day and might have one response, try exactly the same thing again later in the later part of the day and have a totally opposite reaction. It has to do with the state of our brain waves at that time. As adults, we experience the full range of brain waves all throughout the day, depending on what's going on. But the best time for most of us is to right when we're either, depending on whether you're a morning person or a night person, we want to catch you when your brain waves are in kind of a state of relaxation. So if you're one of those people who wakes up in the morning and you hit the ground running, that's the worst time for you to be hypnotized. So I make recordings for clients, and we figure out the best time of day for them to listen for that. So time of day has to do with it. If you had too much caffeine or too much alcohol, you're not going to go into hypnosis if you've had too many of those chemicals in your body. Also, your trust level with the hypnotist, whether you feel comfortable with that person, and also if you're willing to change. I think that's the number one thing right there for success rate is people who have the willingness to change their habits and behaviors are going to have more success than those that are resistant. It's not a magic wand. Some people want to, just have me sprinkle fairy dust on them, but they don't want to change their behaviors, but they want a different response.
And that's what's fascinating. I think at times people have this feeling about hypnotism as mind control. And I believe that either they get that idea from watching movies or you've been to those carnivals where you see these guys that mass hypnotize people. But if you really pay attention, especially to a situation like that, what they're doing is they're actually picking out key people that are susceptible to being, I guess, agreeable to what they're told to do.
Right. They're looking for people that are highly receptive to suggestion. And keep in mind, too, that it's a different context. If you see a stage show, those people volunteered to go up on the stage and volunteer. They know they're going to be asked to do silly things. Any stage hypnotist worth his salt is going to, excuse the people that are not responding the way they want them to. There are so many misconceptions about it. I know when I first got my certification as a hypnotist, I was so excited and really looking forward to working with people. I was quite serious about it. And I can't tell you how many people would respond to me by saying, "Oh, are you going to make me quack like a duck?" And hey, where's that coming from? So, there are a lot of misconceptions.
For every time you hear the word chicken, you're going to jump out in front of oncoming traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
Things like that.
Oh, and Hollywood doesn't help us any. They portray hypnosis. Very
well, what's interesting is there was a movie that somewhat recently had come out. It's out on DVD now. It's called Now You See Me. Are you familiar with that one?
I absolutely love that show, yeah.
Yeah, and the way Woody Harrelson does the character in that movie really shows the truth about those stage hypnotists. He's actually looking for particular people, and you see that's the whole protocol that he's doing. When you understand that, you go and you finally see these carnival stage hypnotists, you go, okay, I get the silly magic that seems to be going on here.
Yes. Yeah, I know. It is such a great show, and he's, that rapid induction and all of that stuff is all very entertaining. It's all theater.
Okay. Now, as someone comes to your office, let's say this is someone who wants to lose weight now, or another one could be to quit smoking. Now, I know my mother did hypnotism many years ago to quit smoking, and it worked. She hasn't smoked cigarettes for a lot of years. And it's fascinating because you look at the difference there. You know, somebody who comes in, they want to lose weight. Someone who's coming in, maybe they want to quit smoking, or someone who really wants to change their financial wherewithal around, maybe by moving into a whole different career and having a fearlessness to be able to go out and do something like that. Now, those are three seemingly, well, maybe the smoking and the weight loss isn't that much different, but what kind of language do you decide to use as you hypnotize someone? I mean, when you think about the differences of what a person's goals are.
Right. Oh, good question. You know, all of those things, you know, they all have that common ground, but one thing we really want to look at with every client is, what are you getting out of having this problem? You know, and my weight loss clients look at me like I'm crazy when I say, so what benefits are you getting out of holding on to this weight? And they'll say, nothing, I hate this. And I'm like, well, I know you don't like it, that's why you're here. But come on, you know, when you're, you know, several hundred pounds overweight, you pretty much are living with unrestricted eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
That is a benefit to you. Are you willing to live with self-imposed changes in that area? So we look at the secondary gains, we discuss whether or not they're really ready for change with that. You know, what are you getting out of having this problem? And then what I use, and this is just like the most amazing thing to me that makes my clients succeed, is an NLP outcome frame. And this is what I use to choreograph the words I'm going to say back to my clients. I very rarely do I use scripts. There's value in using scripts, you know, at times. They have great metaphors. But for the most part, I allow my clients to tell me what they want me to say back to them. So we take a look at, number one, what are you getting out of this problem, and are you truly ready to give it up? And when they say, yes, I am, I think that's important to acknowledge that at the subconscious level. We don't want to demonize this problem. At some point, having this problem brought value into their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Smokers started smoking in high school, and it was a social thing, and it was a way of being accepted and a place of belonging. And so for that purpose, it brought them value, and we want to acknowledge it. But now, later on in life, it's time to look at that habit and to thank it, to bless it, and send it on its way. And it's at that point, then we can say, all right, so now what do you want? And this is key. One interesting fact about the subconscious mind is very much like a computer in that it processes in its own language, it speaks its own language, and that is the language of imagery. So I'm very deliberate about the way I deliver suggestions to clients. I want to make sure that the words I'm using create the image of what they do want. Now, as you may know, we cannot make a picture of ourselves not doing something. So I avoid the use of words such as don't, won't, quit, or stop. So if I have a smoker and I say, so what is it you want? What can I do for you? They say, I want to stop smoking. And I'm like, okay, so I know what you don't want, so what do you want? And it's interesting how many of my clients really struggle with that. Haven't imagined.
I think we all do to one degree or another, because we were always told, you know, don't do this or stay away from that. You know, it's funny how the parents want you to start walking when you're little, and once you start running around and getting into things, would you get out of that? You know, stop doing this, you know. And so we have that language at a very young age.
At a very young age. And look at the pictures those parents are putting in the minds of their children when they say, stop running in the street. Well, guess what? That child just programmed themselves running in the street. So you want to say things to people that, in a way, that it creates a picture of what they do want. So if you don't want to smoke anymore, then what do you want? Oh, well, I want to find it easy to make it through my day free of any desire or free of any thoughts about using tobacco. Okay, now that's a picture I can create. So we create that picture, that's our outcome, and then we flesh it out. We want to know, what does that look like? What evidence is showing you that you have accomplished this goal? So we really, really flesh out the motivation, and we tap into that emotion, because that's what's going to make the change. Like I said, we're not undoing a bad habit. We're creating a new one. And it's often like, I like the analogy of these neural pathways as like a groove in their record. So, you know, we're making a new groove for you. Or perhaps you can imagine a big meadow of grass, and, you know, we have a well-worn trail through there of a behavior that no longer serves us. So we're going to create a new one. And that's the demonstration of repetition that's going to create that trail. We're going to walk back and forth until we have that new neural pathway. So repetition is how we get those new neural pathways And that is why I record my hypnosis sessions. My clients are asked to listen to those once daily until they come back for the next session. And that's what creates that change. So we want to tap into the motivation. We flesh out what it looks like. What does it sound like to have this accomplishment, this outcome? How does it feel? We want to know, what does having this do for you? And what other areas in your life are improved because you have accomplished this? So we just totally hit that imagery of what it is they want and how wonderful it is to have it, et cetera, et cetera. And those are the words that I say back to them.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting to note, though, is that you were saying earlier in the program to be, I guess, scrutinizing about who you want to work with. Now, as a person who does hypnosis, how much personal or inner work do you do, or clearing, should I say? And this was, something that I've heard from a couple of people that are in the profession or in like professions, helping people to initiate or affect change. And they said, you want to, be careful of a therapist who comes into something with a lot of personal baggage.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important because, we don't want to project our issues onto other people. So I think that's important to meet with somebody ahead of time, have a consultation with them and get a feel for them and their work and how they interact with you and, follow your instincts. But one thing I've noticed with every client is that I learn from something about myself from every single one of them. When I see a new name pop up on my appointment calendar, I look at that name and I just think, I wonder what I'm going to learn about myself when I meet this person. So it's a continual process for me as well as them. This is a mutual relationship. I facilitate change in them, but they also have a little piece for me. So that continual growth.
Now, are there other things that you use in conjunction with hypnosis that help people to create change and update their subconscious programs?
Yes, I really love to use EFT with a lot of people, emotional freedom technique. And if you're familiar with that, there's quite a variety of techniques, different ways to do that. And I think they all work equally well. And I love to teach that to my clients, my smoking clients, when they come in for follow-ups. They get complete instruction in that. And it's so fun, when they come in. I actually ask them to start craving a cigarette. I'll try to get that number up to a high 10 if I can. And they look at me like I'm crazy, like, we're trying to get rid of this problem, not make it worse. But then through that demonstration of tapping, they're able to see how that comes all the way down. And we talk about how that is, it's a pattern interrupt. We're disconnecting the thought of that cigarette with that physiological craving for a cigarette. So I love to use EFT. And I also love to delve into law of attraction for those clients that are receptive to that. The majority of them are, but not all of them. So, I'm sensitive to that. But that is just so, it just makes so much sense. It's like the subconscious mind and all of the programming it's like a little microcosm of the big picture, whatever we're thinking about, ruminating about, et cetera, is reinforcing those neural pathways in our physical brain, but it's also sending out that vibrational frequency into the universe saying, I want more of this. And it doesn't care if this is good for you or bad for you. It doesn't care if it'll kill you. It's kind of impersonal. So you get to decide what you're going to send out and what kind of neural pathways you're going to create in your own brain.
So really a great exercise we can leave with the listeners today. Of course, going to a hypnotist might be the next best step depending on where you're at as an individual. And again, it's very unique to the individual, it sounds like. It isn't something where you have a blanket bunch of statements where they come in because they're all trying to quit smoking. It's very tailored to every individual, isn't it?
It is absolutely tailored to every individual because we want to get their words, we want to get their motivating factors, we want to tap into their emotional state. So yes, it's absolutely tailored to suit each person.
And so what you were actually saying, and I kind of wanted to really bring up a high volume on what you had just said just before that, was it's paying attention to those thoughts, to your thoughts. What are they saying? What is that conversation going on in your head when your favorite in-law shows up or your unfavorite in-law shows up, for a Thanksgiving dinner, for instance, and you dread going? What is that conversation going on? And, as I was taught that some time ago, I thought, As I began to pay attention to my thoughts, I started questioning, what makes you think that way? And I started asking questions of myself, and I noticed that slowly but surely I felt like I was coming into reality as it was and willing to face things as they were, not as I thought I was seeing or experiencing them as. And I could see where hypnotism helps a person to recognize and change that languaging pattern that's going on in their thoughts that tend to just kind of run all on its own automatically.
Yeah, it really does, and it's such a big aha moment for my clients when we talk about the fact that, nothing has meaning in and of itself. All the meaning that anything has is that we give to it. So if they're giving meaning to this Thanksgiving dinner with my family is going to be a drag because I don't like these people, well, you know what? That's not really true. That's just the meaning that you've given to it, and that we are in control of the meaning we give to anything. We can take complete charge of all of those situations, and that is so empowering.
Mm-hmm. Nothing like getting out of living in the past and having anxiety for the future and just enjoying the happiness of the moment that you're in right now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Do you find a lot of people that you work with begin saying things like, I never experienced life like I have now in this continuous, endless present moment?
Absolutely. It's wonderful, to reconnect with people after they've been doing this work for a while, and they'll say, gosh, it was great, I quit smoking or I lost the weight, but the best part was that I reconnected with myself. I got back in touch with that inner part of me that kind of got put on the back burner as life got busy and everything. So, yes, to be able to reconnect with that and that presence it's wonderful.
I can imagine it would be. Now, Debbie, for our listeners out there who want to find out more about this, where can they find you on the World Wide Web?
Well, my clinical practice is intuitive hypnosis. I'm here in Portland, so that's www.intuitivehypnosisportland.com. I also teach certification courses for those interested in becoming certified hypnotists, and that is the Portland School of Hypnosis. Again, www.pdxsh.com.
Very good. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program. I feel like a new person already.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. We want to thank you, listeners out there. If you want to impact change, be sure you can also visit us at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. And also sign up for our free exclusive e-newsletter. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.